Hello, and thank you for joining me this evening. My name is Melissa Rogers, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Heritage Property Management Services. And I have had the pleasure of both managing and working alongside managers in the property management industry for the last 13 years. And so tonight's class is going to cover the basics of being a board member and serving in a community association. I will warn you, this will be a fast-paced class, and it is intended to curb your curiosity about serving on the board. So hold on tight tonight, guys. But first, we do have a few housekeeping reminders. While we will be speaking about community association management in general, we will not be addressing any specific or particularly specific community questions. However, please feel free to submit any questions that you do wish to ask in the chat box, as we are monitoring those. Following the presentation, we will open the chat for any questions and answers should there be any time allowed. Not to worry, we will also be monitoring the chat throughout the entire way, as I said before, so please don't hesitate to submit your questions. If this is your first time attending one of our Heritage training classes, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. We do have fairly regular schedules for classes, so don't forget to visit our website tonight after our class. Each of you attending tonight's class will get a copy of our full recording for this evening. So please feel free to put in your ear pods, pour a drink of whatever you want, and enjoy the next 60 minutes of fun. Well, maybe it's not exactly so much fun, but it's very important that these topics are addressed. So Josh, if you will, next slide, please. What is an HOA board? Next, everybody is going to ask this question. First and foremost, we need to address what's a community association and why do we even need a board of directors? So, community associations are corporate entities whose board members must maintain a value of the jointly owned asset. This holds true no matter if you are an HOA, a POA, or a condo association. Okay, community associations are social entities, neighborhoods of people who expect the board to preserve, if not improve, their quality of life. And I'm going to encourage all of you to listen to that last piece right there, because that is going to be a theme that we're going to hear throughout the entire conversation tonight. Community association boards consist of officials that are elected to represent and protect the best interests of the community. Yes, elected. Yay, another big key word that we're going to talk about tonight. Ultimately, the role of the board is to protect and increase the property value. So it's not just to maintain, but oftentimes that maintenance responsibility and even capital improvements are ultimately your responsibility when serving on the board. So this can be accomplished by operating the association, maintaining the common area property, and enforcing the governing documents. So I do want to say that very last one. The first two are pretty easy to remember. The last one is where a lot of boards do tend to have a little bit of issue, because let's face it, we are humans first, and we do want the best human approach to solving problems, but sometimes, unfortunately, that's just not going to be destined in the cards. And so therefore, we do have community association documents that we're going to talk about later that are going to allow us to enforce these proceedings. So how can we accomplish some of these things? This sounds like a really big task. Are you guys already sweating? We haven't even gotten past the first slide yet. I think we're going to be okay, because the good news is you're not going to have to do this alone, okay? Interact with the people who you know in the community. Talk to people who have previously served on the board. It's okay to communicate with each other. Josh, go ahead and go to the next slide. Here are some additional options that we suggest for everybody to look at when you're serving on the board, or if this is your first time, or if you're even considering joining the board, or you're just not sure. Read your association bylaws and declaration. Any other governing documents that we'll talk about here in a second, that should be your first go-to. Then connect with some of the previous people, as I said before, that have served. Connect with the people who have been the institutional homeowners of your association. Even if they're not serving in any type of volunteer capacity, they kind of know where the bodies are buried, and they're going to know a lot of that history that might be valuable to some of you that are maybe 10 years down the road. So that being said, these are some great options for you to consider if you have the privilege of serving on your board. Next slide, please. So as we talked about, what are these governing documents that I just spoke of? These are the items that give the board the authority to do the operations of the community, okay? And so these are the most widely accepted and all of the ones that you should follow and in their hierarchy. Really quickly, I want to point out, in the state of Georgia, bylaws are actually not required to be recorded. Oftentimes, I do want to let you know, oftentimes they always are, but it is a very interesting loophole for some of you associations that may have that capability. We do understand that sometimes getting amendments passed or sometimes even getting quorum for your annual meeting, just so that you can make some improvements within your community, can oftentimes be taxing. So pay close attention to that little one and talk to your association's attorney if you've got any questions about whether or not you have some provisions that could help you in updating your amendments there. So, but more than commonly, people are going to revert to their CC&Rs or their declaration, their bylaws, and any additional resolutions that the board can put into play. Board resolutions are things that the board of directors have the authority to potentially put additional parameters or maybe offer some more robust explanation for certain items, such as finding procedures or enforcement procedures, and maybe even sometimes self-help procedures in the event that maybe the association has that language or the ability. So we most commonly find these items such as a collection policy. That is a board resolution that is already outlined in your governing documents. And what we do is we just put it on a nice piece of paper and make it a lot easier for your homeowners to digest. Yes, it is going to encompass some legalese in there, but the good news is no matter what you do, any type of resolutions or even your rules and regulations or your governing architectural design guidelines, make sure that if you do have an attorney that you work with your association, that they have a copy of them on record, because in the event, again, that you're no longer on the board, or in this case, if you have a management company or are switching management companies, you can ensure that your association's documents are being traveled correctly and everybody has access to those for good, sound operating procedures. Josh, next slide, please. All right, so now, who are the boards? We're going to talk about the officers first, because this is a very important slide to remember. These words are very important. The association acts through its officers and agents. The board of directors make the policies for the association, while the officers and the agents carry out these policies and administrative functions for the community. Did you hear that? Board members are still acting voting members within your association. Now, I will say this that I have not said yet. Governing documents are snowflakes. I am here to tell you there are no two that are alike. So what I am going to be talking about tonight is going to be in the absolute general capacity. I know several of you in the audience right now probably have the most interesting and quite delicate documents that you've ever seen, or maybe your attorney has said, wow, I've never seen ones like these before. We've worked with associations just like you, and don't worry, you can get through it. The good news is you have these three officers, which primarily are the officer roles. Oftentimes we do see a fourth officer that is named in the bylaws, which is the vice president. Okay, but what I do want to let you know is that if you are a bylaw committee that has members or boards of directors or a member at large, don't forget, they are still an equal acting board member within your community. They might just not have some of the great, awesome responsibilities that we're about to go look into. Next slide, please. The first and foremost, the president. All right, community association presidents are required to fulfill many roles, but primary roles are leader and manager. Not every community association has the benefit of partnering with a management company, and so oftentimes my self-managed friends, you are taking on a lot of responsibility, and I want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what some of these things could look like and why having volunteers is so important. All right, different situations will determine which role the association president assumes, and that's going to be based on a lot of different factors. The association presidents gain their authority and lead the community from the association's governing documents. I really want to emphasize this point. When you are working with a board of directors and when you are working with a management agency or a management company, I want to be very clear and let you know that we all, the collective we, seek our direction from the governing documents, okay? Things aren't just made up. Oftentimes there are additional municipal rules or county regulations that have to be adhered to as well. And those are oftentimes also referenced in your governing documents. So make sure that you pay very close attention to not only what your documents say, but also what those ordinances say. And presidents must perceive the association as both a community and a business. This is probably the most important thing I can drive home tonight. You are a business. Please understand that we know that you are living in a community association with your fellow friends and neighbors, and that you also want to enjoy where you live. It can oftentimes become a very emotional position being any member of the board. So I encourage you to remember this. If you treat things and you are fair and disciplined by following the governing documents, you can have a very successful partnership with your community. Next slide, please. Here are some responsibilities that our president can potentially see. Again, this is all going to depend on whether or not you are with a management company or you are attempting to do this on your own. And there are some phenomenal professionals out there that are doing that so well, and I'm so glad that we are able to continue our partnership and assistance with you in this type of education environment. So the board president oversees operations that really deal with every in and out operational item that you can think of. The biggest thing about the board president is they are oftentimes the liaison to a management company, the attorney. They can also oftentimes be maybe a liaison for committees as well throughout the community. And so they're oftentimes put in a more precarious position where they have to speak on behalf of the entire board of directors. And so I think it's very important for everybody to pay very close attention to the items that are in red. The board president will speak for the board and for the association if they're acting in a capacity in that liaison sense. However, if any other board members are speaking to the community or communicating out as well, you too speak in one voice on behalf of the board of directors. We understand that not every board is going to get along and not everybody is going to have the same vantage point on how they look at solving a problem. One of my wonderful coworkers will tell you this story. His grandmother used to tell him growing up, if all of you have the same opinion, some of you are not needed. So that being said, we want there to be healthy debate. We want you to be able to review the topics, but just understand that when you approach the community, you have a responsibility to be united. Next slide, please. Here are some additional president responsibilities when dealing with volunteers versus professionals. I think it's very important to note these are a lot of actions that can happen at any point in time that I think people sometimes take for granted, but believe it or not, when you quantify them like this, we're starting to look at job descriptions right now, right? Next slide, please. pretty sure in your bylaws, although I have come across a few that do allow for compensation. However, most bylaws that I've come across do not allow for compensation for your board of directors, so you get paid in smiles and high fives and thank yous. Being the board president is a position of the association. It's not for everybody, but please don't be discouraged. As I said before, you're working with a team of individuals. There are equal people that want to help and support you. And I do think that really serving on the board can be satisfying in any position, but we certainly understand what the role of the president truly can encompass. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to your manager, to reach out to your community, or to talk amongst yourselves about different ways that you are making sure that you can stay involved within your community and that you're hearing what your community has to say. A lot of us are using surveys right now. Those are awesome. Polling features in the virtual environment are fantastic. We certainly encourage anything you can to keep that dialogue of kindness and happiness as much as possible within the community. Next slide, please. I only say happiness as much as possible because there's a lot in what it is that we do that has a negative connotation. And so conflict resolution is not for the faint of heart in community association management. So that being said, the secretary, ironically, I've come across this in my years of being a manager. Most people actually don't like serving as the secretary more than any other position on the board, which I actually think when you work with a management company, being the secretary is the easiest position on the board, because aside from doing the meeting minutes, we really kind of take care of all of these other operations that we see here. However, for those of you that are not in that capacity where you're working with a management company, I do want to make sure that you have a healthy expectation of what board minutes really should look like, because let's face it, some people can get really in the weeds and can make their liability shine really brightly with what they put in their board meeting minutes. So on the next slide, please, I'm going to share with you just some of the little things that I've learned along the way. And again, this presentation, you guys, is a complete collaboration with CAI, which is our national educational affiliate. Some other great resources that I've just come across in my years of doing business, and some great little catchphrases that I've caught on from other people that I've worked with. So you guys get the benefit of all of our experience, so to speak. So don't forget, you do want to have some discussion in your board meeting minutes, i.e., the property manager is going to get 3 bids for landscaping. Those bids include ABC landscape, 1, 2, 3 landscape, and 4, 5, 6 landscape. Makes sense? That's acceptable. Maybe this person said this person to this one, and we're going to do this and this price and a 2-paragraph dissertation. Maybe I'd advise against that, but it might have merit. And I have seen where some boards do like keeping very detailed minutes on their executive minutes, and then they release the open session minutes to the association and they redact any of the full discussion. So that is another way that I know that some associations are utilizing that, but please don't fear taking board meeting minutes. We also have some great resources for you and some awesome templates. So please, if that is the thing that is keeping you from serving in your community, allow us to help you. Next slide, please. All right, additional secretary responsibilities. Most people think the only thing that they're responsible for is taking board meeting minutes, which is the only reason why they don't want to be a secretary. Well, actually, you're the corporate seal of the entire association. You actually have some really cool responsibilities, in my opinion. You're responsible for maintaining the association books and records, making sure that they can be retrieved at any point in time, and making sure that you have the ability to keep up with all of the federal registrations or state registrations that are required for your business. And again, as we said, great news. If you work with a property management company, the role of the secretary is a breeze. Next slide, please. Most commonly, people forget this too. Being the secretary, you also our witness and verify all signatures on proxies and ballots and such, right? Maintain the lists and the resident homeowner contacts, file the forms with the state agencies, as I said before, and you manage the correspondence. This is really fantastic. I've seen over the years, boards do some really incredible things. Year over year, I've seen certain things such as binders being passed down from board to board. And I mean, they're thick and they've got all of these inserts and tabs and post-it notes. That's fantastic as well, too. Nowadays, people are getting a little bit more technologically savvy and using Google Drives and other resources like that where you can share in real time and edit the documents together. I think that those are all wonderful ways that you can communicate and maintain your association's documents, okay? Next slide. Now on to the treasurer. I want to let you guys know that we have a full class dedicated to being this role right here. I know we've gone into a lot of detail surrounding the president and the secretary. We are going to touch base a little bit on the treasurer, but really this is going to be a main focus for us to talk about the board as a whole. And I do want to let you know that, as most people already know, the treasurer does have the financial responsibility for the association, and they oftentimes, just like the president, can act as a liaison with the CPA, with any other accounting firms that you might be working with, or any other financial committees that might be present within your community as well. So next slide. Let's now talk about who and what the role of the board is now that we've identified those officers, okay? So we've identified the key players. Oftentimes you will find that the board is supposed to be in odd numbers so that we have tiebreakers, okay? So in that particular case, you oftentimes see 3-member boards, 5-member boards. I have even seen 7- and 9-member boards, and I've even seen larger boards than that. So most notably, the 3 to 5 is what we typically see. And so, as we said, 3 of those are usually officer roles and the other 2 are members at large, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the responsibility. So just as we talked about before, now we're going to be encompassing the whole conversation to include the members at large and the officers. And just as a quick touch point, the association membership elects the board of directors. The board of directors then meet after they've been elected, and they elect the officer roles within the board themselves. You as a homeowner don't normally have to run for the board treasurer's position or the board president's position. You're really just running to serve on the board of directors and hope that your institutional knowledge or maybe even your trade skill is going to be something that is going to be beneficial and then allow you to be elected into that officer position. Just as a point of advice. So leave emotions out of decision making. That is the biggest thing that I can ask. Again, we understand that this is a very emotional circumstance at times. Enforce the governing documents. They will keep you in line. That's what keeps you fair and balanced. Establish sound fiscal policies, maintain records, develop a workable budget, and establish reserve funds. Just because you don't have a lot of amenities doesn't mean that you don't have to have a reserve account. I understand if you've joined me in some classes before, there's the difference between sexy amenities and unsexy amenities. The sexy amenities are the pool, the clubhouse, that big front drive entrance. The non-sexy amenities are the irrigation, the electricity, that green space that nobody can build anything on, that really is just a sore spot in the entire community. We know. So do your very best to make sure that you have a healthy understanding that just because you might not have the sexy amenities doesn't mean that they don't have a financial price tag when it comes time to have to repair or replace them. And trust me, for those of you who have ever had to replace or repair an irrigation line at any point, It's kind of like the Energizer Bunny. It just kind of keeps happening. It's like light bulbs that pop, you know? You just want to kind of do them all at the same time. Sometimes, not all the time. But, all right, so this is a big point that I want to point out here too. Selecting an attorney, auditor, an insurance agent, and other professionals for the association. Just because you're self-managed doesn't mean that you don't have the obligation to partner with professionals that can assist you. And same thing holds true with working with a management company. Not all of our services are inclusive of all of these things, and so sometimes you are still gonna have to have that attorney. As much as I wish I was an attorney, and maybe I missed that in my life somewhere, I am not. I am a property manager, and so is just your property manager. Most of your community association managers do not have law licenses, and therefore any type of law interpretation will need to go to the attorney. So it is always a good idea to never smolder the conversation of engaging any professionals. It's okay to do your due diligence, and it's okay for you to make a decision that, hey, it's just not in the best efforts or decisions for the association right now. However, it's a great idea, and we are going to make our best efforts and operational process to get to that point. Maybe that's increasing your assessments for $10 or a special assessment potentially. These are all things that are very important, and they all require oftentimes a reserve account. So make sure as a board member too that you are attending all of your board meetings. It is very important to stay abreast, and if you cannot attend, that you make sure that you read your board meeting minutes, okay? Thankfully, the world of the virtual environment, just as we're experiencing tonight, has lent us the opportunity to be a little bit more accessible to our meetings. We are seeing that meetings are a lot more organized and things are getting accomplished because of some more availability and some structure behind the virtual environment. So this is wonderful. Next slide, please. The role of the board of directors. To be an effective board, directors must have a clear understanding of the expectations of the homeowners. I know most of you have a very good pulse, and like I said, keep on that. Make sure that you're always trying to elicit positive feedback from your homeowners. I know that sometimes is easier said than done, but allow us to help you with that if you ever have any specific challenges. Strengths and weaknesses of the association. It's really important. Like I said before, those institutional homeowners, they know if there's a builder defect. They know if there's this that happened. They know if this is, you know, the way it went down when two developers sold the property and now it's come to this. They might not be serving, but make sure you don't rule them out as viable players that can help you be successful. And then don't forget, take a look at what the history is and make sure that you have a healthy understanding of what you would like to do for the future. Okay, the association has a responsibility for its common elements as well as its management and operation of the association's business affairs. To the extent that an association is a typical not-for-profit, most associations are not 501c3s. Most associations are Georgia domestic not-for-profit. It does not mean that we are tax exempt, however. It just means that your assessments are not taxable income. So that's good. However, you do have the control and the authority in its board of directors to carry out these duties and responsibilities. So it's kind of like it's a cool responsibility to have, but it's a responsibility, meaning people within your association must step up to take these roles. And the more people that you have, the more people you have to share the responsibility. And we definitely understand that right now, everybody's counting their pennies. So, you know, take that in consideration when you're looking at what it costs to potentially have property management and what it would cost to continue servicing your community the way that you are. Potentially that could be a conversation for you this year. Next slide, please. The qualities of a good board member. So this came from CAI. I love this clip right here. These are qualities of a strong board member. I can't even believe that we have to list these sometimes, if I'm being honest. I would hope that we would always seek to have integrity and want to be kind and fair, but it is unfortunate sometimes we have to put these things out, and sometimes we have to put them out in different ways than you would even expect. In the state of Georgia, it's not required to have a board of directors code of ethics, although I am a huge proponent of that. We do have some great samples for you if you are at all interested and can reach out to us after this event tonight. But something to keep in mind, a code of ethics shows a very strong bond between your board of directors and a united front to your association. Next slide, please. So if you do not have a code of ethics, I sincerely suggest that maybe you discuss that in your next board meeting. The biggest responsibilities that boards of directors have, as we are wrapping this up and segueing into working with a property management company, is your duty of care and duty of loyalty. And if you talk to lawyers, these are the most important things that you are responsible for, especially your fiduciary responsibility to these items. So directors have a fiduciary responsibility of loyalty and care to the company and its stockholders. Guess what, folks? That's all of you. Think of yourself just like any other company. Okay, treat yourself the same way that you would want to be treated if you were running the show, except now you are, which is wonderful. So make sure that you exercise good decision making, that you are very concerted when you are reviewing items, and that you're being very diligent. And it is okay to bid out your contracts. You have that responsibility. Next slide, please. As I said before, some of these things are very important, and this is why having a potential code of ethics for your association can be really, really beneficial. So, as we said before, I'm going to start at the bottom of the slide. Engage with experts. Retain that outside counsel if you need to. Property managers are great best business advisors. We're going to give you these best business practices anytime, and we're going to let you know when we think potentially an attorney or a different vendor that is necessary. Sometimes that's a professional engineer for your reserve study, okay? We will let you know whenever we think that those items are of necessary consideration. Disclose conflicts. It's okay to do work with people that you know. You just have to disclose it, okay? If it's in the best interest of your association, fantastic. Just make sure that the people that you work with are licensed and insured. Okay. Draft clear minutes. I think we've put enough time and attention to that, and I hope that I've driven home how board meeting minutes should be written, maybe. All right, respect the process, please. We understand how difficult it can be, and sometimes people don't respond, and sometimes you just wish you could get an answer on certain things, or maybe you don't understand why it takes so long to get A, B, C, and D. We understand that too, but just trust the process. Allow us the opportunity to explain these things. You as board members together have conversations. Make sure that your agenda is inclusive of all these topics so that you don't have any loose ends in conversation. Hold those regular board meetings. I really cannot emphasize how important that is. We do know that there are a lot of boards that often meet too often, meaning if your bylaws say meet once a month, you may want to respect that. Oftentimes, meeting more frequently than once a month does have to happen for various reasons. I simply just suggest that go and respect what your bylaws have authorized for you for your business, and just know that meeting once a month is very commendable for your association's operations. We want to make sure that we don't provide any burnout for any of your other volunteers if your meetings are happening too frequently and work is not actually being accomplished. It's a totally different situation if that's the case and work is being accomplished. Next slide, please. Now, as I said, working with a professional management company. Next slide. Many associations employ either a community association management company or a professional community manager to direct their association operations. You absolutely have that right, and I think you should do it every time you have the opportunity. It's essential that you find a qualified manager for whom you can work with productively. I have a little asterisk there because I want to point out very specifically to you that in the state of Georgia, people are not required to have a management license if they manage one association and they are employed by the board of directors, meaning only one association employed by the board of directors does not require a license. Next slide, please. However, the Georgia Real Estate Commission tells us otherwise. Now, that's just one of very many. That is really the only exception. The example that I offered before is the only exception to working without a license. So the Georgia Real Estate Commission does require that we hold at least one of these three positions. Next slide, please. But many of you also see these professional designations in Georgia. As I alluded to earlier, CAI is our national affiliation and does most of the management designations nationwide. So we are very privileged to also carry CMCAs, AMSs, and PCAMs to a lot of our management titles. So if you are ever engaging a property management company or a property manager, it's perfect to take a look at working with people that have these designations. Next slide, please. This is the best slide, I think, of the entire presentation because it tells you all the great things that we get to do for you. So remember, I told you all that responsibility and it looked really heavy and you were like, yeah, I totally see why nobody wants to volunteer. Well, now you can see why partnering with a management company can oftentimes be that breath of fresh air that you're really looking for. Now, we understand the financial challenges that can oftentimes come with that. So please give us the opportunity to talk with you and help you fund a plan that might be beneficial for your association if property management is something that is really something that you should be considering. So take a look at all of these great things that we do for you without you even having to deal with it. We manage all of the human resources and payrolls for your employees. That's amazing. We coordinate and supervise all of your amenity work, any type of projects, depending on the contract that you have, that can be taken care of for you. We also assist you in alerting you when legal assistance is needed. We coordinate and collect all of your assessment income. We also send all of the notices to your ownership and let them know. We handle all of that communication facilitation so that you don't have to. Now, oftentimes that doesn't preclude us from having to have those discussions internally and making those decisions and then having to go back out to the homeowners and let them know what the ruling is. But working with us, we will be able to give you great access to your financial status and the financial health. Plus, you're going to have access to industry experts, all of those licensed designees. Plus, we have several CPAs that are working for our firm as well that assist all of our clients every day. Next slide, please. So, of course, the question is, what do you think the best benefit is for working with a community management company or a manager? Well, it's really simple, you guys. We understand your position. It's so that you, the volunteers, you guys get a little bit of a break. You're not paid to do this. And I know that it's a very tough job, but it's very rewarding when you can see change and happiness and build community values. It's amazing. And so we just want to be able to help you in that process. Next slide, please. We are coming to the end of our presentation. Look, I spoke so quickly that we actually have time for some questions and answers if there are any. But I just wanted to let you know that here's more information about CAI. As I said, this is a fantastic collaboration of their board toolkit, which oftentimes is a very large document, but it is a free resource available to all of you board members. We'd be more than happy to share that with you as well if you have any questions on that. And next, this is my slide for any of you that have questions. So it looks like we've got 8 questions so far, and let's see what they look like. I'm so excited that you guys have joined us tonight. I can't say that enough. I know this is a little bit more of a subdued training. Normally, for those of you who have ever been to one of our trainings before, I tend to try to make them a little bit lively because I want to be able to engage your attention and hopefully answer your questions like a human being, not legally, maybe. All right, let's take a look. First up. All right, we have an anonymous question asking if there's any continuing education classes available. Oh, I love that. So we are currently looking into partnering with vendors that will allow our board homeowners the opportunity of getting their CE credit. So we don't have any currently slated. That is a fantastic question, and I certainly encourage you to take a look at CAI for all of their resources. Additionally, if you do have a partnership with your attorney, they oftentimes have excellent education resources. The cool thing about Heritage is ours are free. But they can sometimes go into a little bit more detail. But yes, we will certainly let you all know when we will be offering those, because I think that that would be of great benefit as well. All right. Rebecca W., thank you so much for your question. How often should we update our governing documents? That is a fantastic question. And I think it's safe to say that as often as possible is truly the answer, which is not the answer that I really want to say, but things are changing quite rapidly right now. As legislation changes year over year in community association management, the big things that we're seeing, the hot ticket items right now are leasing restrictions or parking or any type of true enforcement procedures or restrictions on land. And so anytime you've got those kinds of changes for your community, we sincerely encourage that you update your association documents to the best of your ability. I also sincerely suggest that you don't incorporate too many updates in one amendment. Okay, sometimes you can confuse your association, and we've unfortunately seen sometimes that if we don't file things in the correct order, all of your hard work can actually not be done correctly. So this is why we oftentimes, and your attorney will recommend this too, keep it simple when you do your amendment. But if you can and you have an active community, amend your documents often. Tailor them specifically to how your community operates effectively. It's just, how much money do you as an association have to bear that expense, and is it in the best interest of the association? So that's a fantastic question. And it looks like we have 2 questions about the meeting content. So looks like, hold on, I'm reading this right here. We have working sessions to discuss various matters without taking and publishing minutes. Okay, so here's a question that was asked. Can we, the board of directors, have working sessions without having to take board meeting minutes? Absolutely, but a working session is just that. You can't take any action. There can be no conclusions come in that working session. I'm a huge proponent for working sessions, especially surrounding your budget. Absolutely. The next question, do you have a template for creating an agenda? Of course. Board meetings? Absolutely. And minutes being recorded, discussion items for open session that are not intermingled with discussion items that should only be recorded under the executive session. That is a great question. And yes, I do have a great template. So here, just really quickly, because it's so much easier for me to tell you what should be an executive. Anything that is related to personnel, the attorney, or people's private matters should be in the executive session. Okay, so delinquency, legal, personnel, executive session. Most everything else should be able to be discussed within the open session of the association. However, it is very good to always have an agenda when you're meeting as a board and with the community, and it is always a recommendation to have a timed agenda if you are in a community where your association oftentimes would like to engage within that time period. Sometimes finding some timing within your agenda can lend for a more successful environment within your board meeting. All right. Next question. I love these questions. They're wonderful. What recourse does an association have if the board does not fulfill its fiduciary responsibility? Can the board face legal liability? Yes, you can. I did not want to go into this topic, but I'm glad that you asked this question because there is something called receivership. For those of you who may have known about it or may not, in the event the last man standing, and I use man interchangeably here, the last person standing is technically in breach of their fiduciary responsibility to the association, and the association can actually sue the board of directors and force it into receivership, where it is then governed by a judge, and a judge appoints the controller of the association until the association can get its matters back on track. Now, I will definitely tell you, I have worked with associations that have been in receivership, and I've worked with associations currently that have successfully gotten out of receivership and are doing fantastic and are engaging their association homeowners and are getting really good volunteerism. But yes, it is unfortunate. There can oftentimes be a big, heavy liability on the association if there are no homeowners that want to volunteer. Yes. All right. Another question, are there repercussions for not taking meeting minutes? That's an interesting question, and I've never had that asked before. Yes, I would think there would be, because then you have no record of the association. Think of it like this. Even if you're working as a board, if you don't have a record of what you've approved as allowable transactions with signing contracts or engaging with a professional, and you are questioned by the ownership and you have no support to be able to provide the judge and or the ownership, yes, you could potentially face some repercussions for that. So this is, again, one of the reasons why I say, please just keep your board meeting minutes plain and simple. In this same line, your board meeting minutes, as I said or alluded to earlier, they can oftentimes be overly verbose. That's where the liability comes into the association, and you insert your foot in your mouth and you can get yourself into really legal hot water. So not taking board meeting minutes and putting too much information in your board meeting minutes is an equal liability for your association. All right. So we have another anonymous question. When language within the governing documents is unclear and the board members disagree on the meaning of how to resolve this issue, even when the attorney cannot provide clear meaning by majority of vote of the board. Whoa, I have follow-up questions to this one, so hold on one second. I think I want to reread this one more time so that I can hear you correctly. There's a couple of different parts here. First part is, what happens when a board is in disagreement about the interpretation of the governing documents? Number one, contact your property manager. If your property manager then is stumped by that too and says, ooh, this is sticky, we got to go to the attorney, then we can go that route and we would let you know. If you're in a self-managed capacity, then what would end up happening is you would seek an attorney to be able to assist you with that interpretation. And even if the attorney cannot provide clear resolve, I would still think that a vote, a majority vote of the board of directors is how you should proceed in making that decision. Absolutely. Think of it like this. Just make sure that any decisions that you make as the board of directors, and don't worry about the timeline, okay? Even if something comes back from time in the past, think about it like this. if you know that you can defend the actions in front of the judge, heaven forbid something happen where we have to escalate to that point, and you have a healthy understanding of why you made that decision as a group, then please feel free in going forward in supporting that decision. It's only when you do not have defensible support that you should not move forward with making decisions. Again, it is a very litigious time. I wish it wasn't, but it very much so is. The last 5 years, we have seen, unfortunate claims amok, and that's not even related to COVID-19. So just in general, what we do can be very litigious, so let's not put any additional amplification to ourselves. So, all right. Next question. Do you have any recommendations for open meeting times, i.e. town halls? Oops, excuse me. With COVID, we are only meeting remotely now. This is an excellent question. And I do want to let everybody on here, while this is, and we have 9 minutes, while this is a Cram course, we do have a very full, extensive course where we go into a much longer process of really getting into the nitty-gritty of community association management. And one of the slides that we particularly spend some time on is town hall meetings, because I'm a huge proponent of these. Just as you had talked about, I believe, who was the gentleman that asked my question? There was somebody, Kevin, I believe it was, in having those open discussions. I feel the same way about town halls. I want you guys to have working communication. You need to work together as a board, but you equally need to work with the community. And the best way to do that is through a town hall. Oftentimes too, I always make this recommendation during budget season. And this is just me because I have been in the hot seat as the property manager having to deliver the budget. And so it has been my experience that really, really effective communities that have to increase their dues or have really tough conversations with their association, when they host town halls to just have open discussion where there's no decisions being made, it makes having that annual meeting or that meeting to vote on the budget or whatever that much easier for your homeowners to, one, digest and want to participate in. So absolutely, I don't think that there is enough advantage taken of town hall meetings because it does require people's time. But I had a very effective town hall meeting last night with one of our associations, and it was wonderful. One of the benefits that we're also seeing in the virtual environment is we're able to videotape meetings. So even if you're not able to be a part of things, we're able to videotape them. Now, that doesn't mean that we release those to the association. So I know that there are some of you that are actively recording your open sessions and putting them out. That's for here or there, and I sincerely hope that you have good defense from your attorney and their good wishes on that. I'm sure you probably don't have any issues with it, but I'm just saying for purposes of that, I'm not clear. All right. Oh, I read that question. So sorry. Thank you. Do you have? Yes, I read that one too. Okay, Karen, how do we get people to run for the board? We only have 36 homes in our community, and it is really hard to get 3 people to run, I bet. Okay, so first and foremost, I want you to give them a copy of this right here, and I want you to let them know that they don't have to do this alone. The greatest thing about working with our company is that you don't have to be a client to get these resources. My self-managed people are my favorite people in the world because I really want to make sure that you guys have the best access to this. You're doing it yourself. So I really think that this is such a tremendous privilege for us to be able to have this opportunity to speak with all of you. So I really would say, share as many training resources and as many additional supportive resources that you possibly can. Engage in some type of dialogue with the association and let them know, maybe you have to bribe them. And I hate to say it like that. $50 Amazon gift card right now as a signing bonus. I mean, you might want to have to take a look at your documents to see if you have that capability, but you know, there's nothing wrong with getting people to kind of drink the Kool-Aid first and then get into the responsibility later. You know, we want to get people to dip their toe in. I have definitely found the more positive your communication out to the community is as a board, the more you will get people to want to volunteer. If you, the homeowner board, are stressed and overwhelmed and are telling the association how difficult it is to do this, you're probably not going to get as many people than if you said, you know what, we're here to support you. We understand that this is a voluntary position and we know that you work full time. Let's talk and meet together because we have a requirement to run our community. And don't you want to make sure that our home values stay at this point? Or don't you want to make sure that that detention pond gets addressed before we have additional drainage issues that are going to get us in legal hot water? These are the types of things that I definitely want you guys to make sure that you're having healthy conversations that promote you looking like something that people would want to run for. All right, Buck has a question. How can we look to Heritage for advice on COVID compliance meetings? Absolutely, you can, and we have great resources, but that I think have since taken off of our website, but previously we had some great COVID materials, and we have some great virtual meeting informationals as well for you if that's more so what you were looking for. We would love to be able to provide that to you. You guys have my direct contact information. As I said before, we will send you this recording for you to be able to look at. You are welcome to share this. Again, please visit our main website and take a look at some of the additional classes. I will be hosting this class a few more times this year for any of you who have any appointments on your board, or if you have an election coming up and you have new board members that would like to hear this content as well. This is really important that we make sure that you have all of the resources. I cannot stress it enough. We know how difficult it is, so please allow us to help you with that. I love doing what I can to solicit people to be on the board and help their communities thrive. So I really thank you all for your time tonight. This has been an excellent class. I do hope that you got as much from it as we did in providing it to you. I thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all again at our next training. Have a wonderful evening.